Welcome back to SportsLine. We are pleased and delighted to have the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, the best play-by-play announcer in the National Football League, without question. Come on, don't be humble.
There's a lot of question.
Not in our mind, not in Titans fans' minds.
But you've heard a lot of. I mean, there are a bunch of. Really
I've heard a lot.
announcers.
I'm friends with a lot.
Brad
John Murphy,
Sham,
yeah.
Brad Sham with the Cowboys.
Dan Horde with the Cincinnati Bengals.
He's
John Murphy
announcer.
with the Buffalo Bills.
John Murphy's a very good announcer.
Yeah, I worked with both.
Jeff Joniak with the Bears.
Yes.
He's outstanding.
Had a great talk with him at the NFL Combine. What a nice guy.
He's a great guy.
We talked for about 20 minutes. He was the nicest guy, and he was the Devin Hester, you are ridiculous guy, right?
Devin Hester, you are ridiculous.
Doesn't beat there are no flags on the field, though, my friend.
Well, that was at a Super Bowl he called.
That was a pretty big game that you called.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to more of Mike Keith and his legendary broadcasting career with the Titans. But first, let's hit the phones for the first time tonight. Let's check in with Mike on line one. Hey, Mike, you're on with JB and Mike Keith.
Hey, I'd just like to commend Mike Keith for being the announcer for the Tennessee Titans, and I think that he ought to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame as going down as one of the great announcers. And I just want to tell him to keep up the great work that he's doing. And my other question is, where's Javon Curse been lately? And my other question is, do y'all think that in time that Marcus Mariota will be maybe in the Pro Bowl representing the Titans, or after we win the Super Bowl this coming year? And I hang up. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for calling, Mike. See, another guy that knows how great you are.
Thank you. My understanding is Javon Curse is back in Florida, and so he is enjoying life back in Florida, and we've had him involved in several things as he moved. It's hard to believe that he was the first-round pick. He was the first Titan, actually, the first official Titan in 1999. In terms of Marcus Mariota going to the Pro Bowl, I think he's going to have a chance to get
Absolutely.
there. Will it be this year? I mean, it's hard to know, but I think he tracks that way. And it's one of the reasons that if you study the Titans' schedule and you're trying to come up with what the record will be, the nice part, finally for the Titans, is you don't have a game on there you say, we can't win this game.
Yep.
Because, John, when you have a quarterback, you always have a chance. And now the Titans have a quarterback.
And that's the thing I always talk about, Mike, is the definition of a franchise quarterback, right?
Right.
And you know this. You've watched a ton of football, as have I. Running game's not working.
Right.
Defense isn't playing too well. Special teams gave up a couple of big plays. But if your quarterback plays well, you still have a shot. No matter if everything else breaks down, if your quarterback plays well, you have a shot. And that's what the Titans have right now with Marcus Mariota, right?
Well, we played very poorly against Cleveland last year. And yet, here we are in the fourth quarter. If Brian Orakpo makes the sack on Johnny Manziel, and Johnny Manziel made a nice move and ended up throwing a touchdown pass, but if he makes that sack, the Titans get the ball back with a chance to tie the game or maybe even win the ball game. And you're sitting here saying, this is the difference.
Right.
The difference is you can play poorly for 2.5, 3 quarters, but if you have a guy who can make 1 or 2 plays and make something happen, you're not ever out of it. And that's what Marcus gives this organization.
No question about it. Back to the phones. Brian, line 2. You're on with JB and Mike Keith. How are you? Brian, you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
I just got a quick question. The chances about getting Andre Johnson and what kind of talk was being talked about, them getting him, and what kind of player do you think he could be for the Titans?
All right, Brian, thanks so much for the call. He did visit the team yesterday, Andre Johnson, 35 years old, over 1,000 catches in his NFL career, 68 touchdowns. I think it's just a matter of, does this guy have anything left and what kind of role he would play with the Titans. I have not seen any news on that front. I don't know if you have today.
Haven't heard anything as far as that goes. The Titans do have an open roster spot. They're at 89 right now. Are you just kicking the tires to see where he is? Do you want to bring him in at the start of training camp? Is he somebody you might want to bring in midway through training camp? If you're not totally satisfied with your wide receivers, it feels like a tire kick to begin, just to see where he is, to see where you are, to kind of feel exactly, what he's thinking and then what you're thinking as well. But we'll see. I mean, they do have the open roster spot, and I think John Robinson is going to look at every option.
Sure,
I think
why wouldn't he?
This is going to go towards the next stage of what you're going to see out of John Robinson, and that is he's going to look at everything. He is going to look at every possibility there is for this roster. And as I mentioned, the waiver claim position being number one on the waiver claim until the final Monday in September when they sort of reshuffle based on the first 3 weeks of the season. That's something, you know, he could go through a lot of different guys trying to bring in people to give competition at different spots. So, again, haven't heard anything specific. Johnson played okay last year in Indianapolis. What does he add at this point? That's a question for the coaching staff, not for me. But I will say this. I think he's a Hall of Famer. And he's certainly, even though he played for the opposition, a class act in Houston.
I would agree with that on both of those points. You know, there was talk about maybe him coming in and being sort of a mentor for the younger receivers. Doesn't sound like he wants that role. I think he still wants to be a starter or a solid number 3, you know, sub-package guy to, you know, to get a lot of targets his way. And, I mean, the guy's still in phenomenal shape for 35 years old. And, you know, his track record speaks for itself. As you said, over 1,000 catches. Only a handful of guys in history have done that. So it'd be interesting to see if they brought him in.
I'll be fascinated to see. When I heard that somebody called me, I was out of town, somebody called me, and I'm like, seriously? Andre Johnson?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, big name, no question.
No question about it. Back to the phones. And James on line 3. What's up, James?
Hey, man, what's going on?
You, brother, you're on with JB and Mike Keith. What's up?
Not much. Sitting here watching y'all. Looking forward to football season.
Yeah, it's back, man. What do you think about the Titans this year? You got a question for Mike?
Yeah, I ain't got a question, but I'd like to tell me the little Hope Hines over there.
Not all the way gray yet, though. not that good silver.
Times out there, you know, listen to the shows every weekend, and you've done a great job. And
well, James, we appreciate that. Thank you so much for calling in. We do appreciate that.
I just wish I had Hope's money.
You and me both, brother. I wish I had half of it. Let's check out, see what Leon has to say. Hey, Leon, what's up?
Hey, JB and Mike, how you doing?
We're doing great, man. Glad to have you on.
Hey, you know, we've talked about the additions that the Titans have on offense and defense, but I think the X factor is going to be the special teams. And the Titans have struggled with the special teams the last few years. I just want to know, what do you guys think they're going to do as far as who's going to be in the return game, you know, as far as kickoffs and punts. And I'll just hang up and listen to what you guys have to say about that.
All right, appreciate the call. Thanks for calling in.
A lot of it is tied into who the third running back is going to be.
Right.
And the leader in the clubhouse for that going into camp is certainly Dexter McCluster.
Right.
If Dexter McCluster is going to be the third back, then I think you're going to see him be the punt returner. The Titans, and when you talk about struggling on special teams, the Titans really haven't struggled that much on special teams. They just haven't
popped a lot of big plays, right?
No, they just haven't done much in the punt return game, and that's an area where they've got to improve. As far as who returns kickoffs, I'm not sure it matters.
Yeah.
With the ball, the new rule, you know, there are 3 major rule changes this year in the league. One of which is the ball comes out to the 25 following a touchback. It's like the college rule.
Right.
With that being the rule, I don't know that you want to run it out.
Yeah.
I mean,
would take a knee.
I'd take a knee every time.
You know, you're only 75 yards away from payday. That you can get there in 2 plays. Some of these offenses we've seen. So.
Well, and you don't take a chance on getting pinned inside your 20. And how many times too are you in a situation that you get a clip, a block in the back, whatever, and you end up starting at your own 8-yard line? Right. Just take a knee.
Yeah.
You know, just take a knee. Now, what the league's going to watch, and I think eventually the kickoff will be gone from the game.
It seems like we're going that way, doesn't it?
It's moving that way. The next step is going to be they're not going to let defenders take a running start. They're going to make them start from a set position. That's the next step potentially.
Yeah.
But if we end up with these mortar kicks where they see how high they can kick the ball and try to pin teams inside their 15 or 20, then the league may rethink all this one more time. But the feeling is people will not bring the ball out of the end zone if they know they're going to start at their 25. And that puts less of a premium on the returner.
Sure.
And it puts you in a position, from a roster standpoint, you don't have to carry a kickoff return.
That's a good point. You know, you can keep an extra wide receiver
or whatever,
offensive lineman, defensive lineman, linebacker.
Just put somebody back there who can catch it, or just let it go.
Right. A 300-pounder could catch the ball and take a knee in the end zone, right?
Somebody might do that.
Yeah. Well, the caller mentioned Dexter McCluster, and you look at DeMarco Murray, who we're going to talk about, Derrick Henry, who we're going to talk about, because I know people want to know what the dynamic is going to be between those two running backs, and I'm curious too to get your thoughts on it. But I had a great talk with Dexter McCluster during OTAs and minicamp. He feels great. He feels confident that Malarkey's going to find things for him to do in this offense. Talked to Malarkey about that. He said the same thing. I want to get your thoughts on that. Dexter McCluster, I think he's a valuable guy to have, not only on the field but off the field. What do you think his role could be, should be, will be in this offense this year?
That's got to be defined very quickly because he is so different from those two backs.
Yeah.
Now, that's helpful. But remember, these two backs also are good pass protectors and they're good pass catchers. So will they come off the field? So could a Sankey fill the same role? And he's a bigger back.
Right.
He's about 210 pounds. So can they keep four backs and a fullback? I don't know. I think McCluster has really got to show well and has got to prove to them that he can do these different things. And he's got a big leg up because the head coach is crazy about him. Loves his work ethic, loves him as a football player. But, they've got to, there's been talk since he got here, let's use him in the slot, and it's never happened.
Yeah. He was supposed to be the Swiss Army knife, do everything, and it just hasn't worked out for some reason.
No, it hasn't worked out that way. But, it's been a team that's only won 5 games, so it's not like they've had lots of time to experiment. They've spent way too much time behind. He's 5'8", he's 170 pounds. It's tough in that area because, he takes hits, he gets banged up at times. He's a tough guy, not taking anything away.
Yeah.
But Kansas City had a very specific way of using him. And that's what the Titans have got to figure out about him as well because he's a good football player, but he's a very specific use type of football player.
All right, when we come back, we're going to take more of your phone calls, 737-7767. And, Mike, we're going to get into this whole running back situation between DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. I want to get the VOT's thoughts on how these two running backs will be used. We'll get to all that and more next on SportsLine. Stay with us.